Hi everyone, welcome back to the Genuine Being series. When I was a kid, there was a book or a series of books that I hope still exists called Choose Your Own Adventure. And it was a situation where, for example, you would open it up and there'd be an initial story of where you start. You're driving down the road and you run out of gas and it's dark out. Do you stay in the car in the hopes that someone drives by? If so, go to page 2. If do you want to go out and look for help? If so, go to page 10. And then there would be a ripple effect from there. And as much as we would like to believe that the Buddhist path is just one narrow thing, you do level A and then you go to level B and so on and so forth, it's not necessarily like that. It's actually more of a choose your own adventure. And within our existent, very large online community, we have, I'm guessing, slash have a hunch slash have talked to many of you, people who, for example, signed up and they're still saying, okay, I'm not exactly sure how to even get a practice going. So they've been sort of receiving things, and the choose your own adventure here is sitting on it, maybe even feeling guilty that I haven't got going in the way that I was hoping to, and all of these things. And, I don't even know how to start at this point. It's been so long. There's all these videos to catch up on. Or maybe there's the choose your own adventure. You signed up for this series and then you've been very diligent and you're catching up. You're staying up with the videos and your practice has fallen by the wayside. Or your practice is great, but you haven't watched a Genuine Being video in months. Or, there's any number of iterations thereof. This is sort of the, like, I'm still getting going with the program sort of thing. And so that's one sort of big group that I'll talk about. And then there's some people who have been doing this for a while. This being this whole meditation thing and the Buddhist study thing. And you might even have noticed that as we've gone through the Genuine Being series, there's different cycles of the teachings that we've been talking about. We talked about the foundational teachings of the Four Noble Truths. We talked about how to work with ego. We talked about how to then move into sort of what are known as the Mahayana greater vehicle teachings around offering our heart and loving kindness and compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We talked about the 6 paramitas of generosity, patience, discipline, meditative exertion, joyous exertion, meditative concentration, and wisdom. So there's lots of there's cycles of teachings, and I'm sort of familiar with those cycles of teachings. They're not hitting me fresh, and I'm starting to understand how it all pieces together. And that's a different sort of relationship to all of this. Of I think I've seen this song and dance before called Buddhism, and I realize that there's a natural arc to it, even if it isn't A to B to C to thing. And then there are people who maybe have been doing this for quite some time, and you have a very strong established practice, and you sit every day. It's, if there is something religious about all this, it's the fact that you sit every day at the same time, you sit for a half hour or longer, and you are, you've done maybe previous programs with me like the Buddhist Immersion, or you've gone on retreats before, or things like that. I'll talk more about the Buddhist Immersion later, I promise. And there's the path for you. So I think it's just good for us to sort of zoom out and take stock of where are we in our path. And it's not even a, beginner, middling, advanced. It's I think there's a book behind me. It's a very famous Zen book by the teacher Suzuki Roshi, who's credited with bringing a whole lineage of Japanese Zen to the Americas. And he wrote a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, meaning that we should always have a beginner's mind. That in fact, this whole notion of genuine being is us coming home to just resting with this openness, this sense of spaciousness that we keep talking about. This beginner's mind, the mind that is open to anything. That's the Zen mind that he's referring to. A mind that is completely open and awake. So we've been looking at this from different angles, but where do we go from here? Which page do we turn to at this point? And it really is determined on where we feel we would like to do the most work. At the core of this, 4 months into this whole thing, if you had been meditating every day and not listening to a single word I said outside of that, you'd still be a great practitioner in my mind. You'd still get a lot of benefit because the practice is the bread and butter that's going to transform our lives. So if you're the sort of person who's still saying, I'm struggling with getting a daily practice going. And when I say daily practice, I mean 5 days a week. Sometimes maybe you fall off on the weekends. That's a very common obstacle for people. In which case, by the way, you might want to sort of revert to a different time slot in the weekend. So, I sit, every Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. is my time, and then the weekend it's part of this routine. After the kids have eaten breakfast and things before we go out to run the errand, that's the time I sit. Sort of you might have to think about it differently, but somewhere in that range of 5 to 7 days a week is a good daily practice. And I think this is, again, a very personal thing. Like, what adventure do you want to choose? If you're still saying, that seems like a lot to me, 10 minutes a day is a good amount of time. So just saying, okay, I will stick to that for 10. I've got 10 minutes a day on that 5th, 6th, 7th day of the week. We all have that. I've known many people who often will say, I'm just so busy, but 10 minutes a day, it's like we still find time to scroll through Twitter and watch a Netflix show. That's often takes up more than 10 minutes a day. So sort of finding, like, prioritizing, sticking to it and saying, I'm going to really become a little bit more disciplined in the coming month, saying 10 minutes a day. For some people who have been doing that for these 4 months, you might want to say, okay, that feels like almost what we would call maintenance sit. It's like it's not like landing. I'm just sort of slowing down long enough, and then I'm up and on the timer runs and I'm back in my day, and it feels like it doesn't do much. So 20 minutes a day. If you've been doing 20 minutes a day thus far, 30 minutes a day. And if you are in that category, someone who's been meditating for quite some time, you've been doing 30 minutes a day, maybe it's time to consider doing, here's multiple choose your own adventures, an extra 15 minutes in the evening or extra half hour in the evening, or one long sit of an hour. It doesn't even have to be every day. It could be, for example, Monday to Friday I sit for a half hour, Saturday, Sunday I do the hour, because I've got more time, it's the weekend. That's okay. But I think it's worth us, from a practice element, looking at how can I go further at this point? What does it mean to me personally, having chosen this particular venture of not doing much yet, or having spent years doing it? We can all sort of go further with our practice. And I do this, by the way. This is my personal experience as well. Part of my instruction for teaching the Serious and Genuine Being is that I also have to be very genuine about where I'm at. And for me, it's like, okay, I do an hour of practice a day. But if I can, then I do 2 hours of practice a day. And once a week, I do a long session, many hours a day. I try and do, like, retreat time once a month as well, like longer retreat time. So, that's just me. That you shouldn't say I should be like Lodro. You should say I should be like, Cindy. I should be like Diane. I should be like Alex. That's good. You should be like you. So I think it's really saying, okay, like, when I sit here and I say, okay, I've been doing an hour a day, even as I say, okay, come, I do an annual program with one of my teachers in November. That's a good time for me to recommit to the 2 hours a day. That's sort of saying, okay, here's what the next step. This is the time that I'm going to turn to page 25. And life gets in the way, and we get thrown curveballs, and our practice falls away for a little bit, and then we get back. And that happens to you, and maybe this has happened to you, and that's where you are in this journey, my advice is to start slow again. So for me, I would say, okay, a half hour a day, and then I get back to an hour a day. Mercifully, that hasn't happened to me in a number of years, but if for you, maybe it's okay, I've fallen off the wagon entirely, I start back at 10 minutes a day, and that's okay. Then there's the study aspect, and it's really, in common Tibetan Buddhist traditions, they'll say that study and practice are like the 2 wings of the bird. You can't progress without both, in the same way that a bird could not fly and go on its journey without only one wing. So we need to balance our practice with our study. For people who have a little bit of catching up to do with the Genuine Being videos, maybe that's the thing you do. You say, okay, I will watch 2 a week, or 1 a week, knowing that these come out every other week, in order to catch up on them. But make a plan for yourself and say, okay, a lot of these are 20, 30 minutes. That would be 1 hour. You could watch 2 back to back, or you could do one day and one another day. And you notice that within 2 weeks or so, you would quickly catch up, I'm sure. So that's a good thing to do, to sort of make a plan for how you stay consistent then going forward with these videos that'll go until the end of the year. And then we'll have a different cycle of teachings. This is why I'm recalibrating now, so that people don't just completely fall off and say, okay, enough. I can't keep up. But it's good for us to have a plan. So maybe it's that for you. And maybe the sort of genuine being videos of like, okay, I get it. I'm I'm coming home to my genuine being enough. Maybe it's not for you at this point. It might be worth considering other forms of more formal study. And, there's the Buddhist Immersion, as I mentioned earlier, is a 5-month program that starts in January. And it's, if I can take sort of not arrogant pride, but sort of like joyous pride or confidence pride in the sense of like, this is a good program. I know because I've heard, we've had 150 people do it over the last 2 years. And each time I've heard people say, yeah, like I really got a lot out of it. And it's really meaningful that people have been able to come together. It feels like a very joyous 5 months for me personally to lead this program. And what it is a series of videos. These are once per week. So if you're like, oh my God, I've been having trouble keeping track with one every other week for whatever reason, when we know that we're doing this for a limited period of time, which is like these 5 months, I'm going to get deep with Buddhism. I'm going to learn everything I need to know about Buddhism 101 to 202, essentially. We do it. Like people have not actually really had much trouble keeping up with the videos. I would say that about 75% of people are able to just go straight through them at that pace, and then other people are like, oh, I catch up after the program with the last few videos that I missed. Anyway, that's tangential. It's sort of weird graphics that you don't need to know the demographic of these things. But we had, often on average about 75 people from 10 different countries do this program. And each week you receive a different videos covering one new step on the Buddhist path. So these 20 steps, essentially, that take us through what are known as the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. So even in the Genuine Being series, we've touched on the first 2 to some extent. But here it's the real, similar where we started with the 4 Noble Truths, that moves into the Eightfold Path, and moves into 4 Foundations of Mindfulness. Very much like the nitty-gritty, everything you would need to know about the Buddhist path, done over those 20 weeks. So 5 months, and then there's an accountability group that you can meet with that keeps you consistent with your practice. If you need that level of support, people often find that very helpful. There's an online message forum board that you can join that people will often post and will feature different members of the community each week. There's monthly meetups, not unlike what we do. There's readings for each of the videos. So it's a very robust program. There's guest videos from 5 different teachers. I think we'll move up to 6 different teachers this year because I want to include another friend. So it's a wonderful program. I'm probably not doing it good justice. You can ask other people in the online community about their experience because, again, some people have already done this. Some people have already done this and the mindfulness teacher training. Some people have already done, some people have not done it. So it's nice for you all to have chances to talk about where you are on the path and where, what people recommend. So I'm not trying to do a sales job here, but I think it's a good program if that's something you want. And there are other Buddhist programs that are worth studying in. So, if that's not for you and you're like, I would love something simpler, let me know and I can try and find something that feels more tailored to you, what you're going through. But that's a good one for people who are looking for more structure in terms of study. And then there are the people who have been doing this, again, for a while. Maybe they have done the Buddhist Immersion, maybe they've done other programs that are deep dives into Buddhism, and they're feeling that itch to sort of give back. And that's a good time to do something like a mindfulness teacher training. That the intention isn't, I'm going to go get a cool career, because I think there's probably much loftier and nicer careers than becoming a mindfulness instructor, but it's the idea that we would actually start to really want to give back. We know how much the practice has affected us and changed our lives, and we want to be able to make that accessible to other people. So if that's something that you're sort of itching to do, that intention has arisen for you, then the mindfulness teacher training is also a good program that starts in January. So that we learn, the ins and outs of how do we not only work and teach the technique, but how do we manifest as a teacher? How do we build talks? How do we hold space for people in Q&A? How do we look at our own power and positionality and our lens from an anti-racism perspective to actually make sure that we are able to be of most support to people? How do we look at our own relationship to money and livelihood? Anyway, that's another fun thing that I get to do come January, and I hope that some of you might be able to join me. So these are some programs that are coming up that are might be helpful. So if you are sort of a brand new practitioner, you might be saying, okay, I just want to keep up with the Genuine Being videos because these are very accessible for any level of student, but hopefully also for people who are more advanced, they sort of understand that I'm talking about coming home to our Buddha nature, our natural wakefulness, and are more and more experimenting with how to rest in that. And if you are also newer, maybe the book club is a very good one because the books that we read are often from Western teachers that are very like they're very much based in just trying to take the traditional teachings and make them applicable to our day-to-day lives. So our upcoming ones around, Say What You Mean by Oren Sofer is about communication, which we could all probably benefit from. Ralph De La Rosa's book is Don't Tell Me to Relax. Ralph has actually agreed to come in and meet with the book club, which is nice. He's a friend of mine, so it's an easy favor to ask. And, that's another really good one about just like bringing meditation to the path. But, I think a lot of this, it's like maybe we read those book titles and we say, no, that's not for me. And we don't flip to that page in the Choose Your Own Adventure. We stick just with the Genuine Being videos. We stick just with the monthly socials or whatever it might be. That's good. For people who have been doing this for a little while, they feel like, okay, I've been getting like a pretty consistent practice going. I do think something like immersive, like the Buddhist immersion, is very good as a structured program. There are other structured Buddhist programs out there, but something that takes you from A to B to C. Even though there isn't like a formal, like here's exactly how you should proceed, the teachings themselves are laid out in a way that we can access in different times. And we have people who keep repeating the Buddhist immersion because it's just that sense of like, oh, every time I do it, I understand that the skeleton structure of Buddhism becomes a little bit more clear to me. And that's very good. It's not like Buddhism changes year after year. It's like the same skeleton structure of it is there all the time, and we can just keep adding meat and bones and meat and blood and all skin and all these things to really flesh out the full form of our understanding of Buddhism. It's a bit of a gross analogy, I apologize, but it's also Halloween time, so maybe skeletons are in vogue. And then for people who have been doing this for a while, I think something like a mindfulness teacher training is great, but we also have advanced Buddhist studies where we go through very esoteric texts. Most recently, we did something called Words of My Perfect Teacher by the 18th century master Patrul Rinpoche, and then we did something from the 8th century master Shantideva, known as The Way of the Bodhisattva, and we'll do some other texts in the near future. So if you are interested in very advanced Buddhist studies, you can always inquire about that, or I will send you information. So again, it's sort of like, where am I, and what do I feel called to? Do I want to do the esoteric stuff? Do I want just like someone to explain Buddhism directly to me? Do I want to stay with the sort of applicability of the online community's Genuine Being series? Where do I want to go here? And we could say I want to go multiple ways. That's also fine. You could flip to pages 20 and 25 if you feel so inclined and you feel really ambitious. Sometimes when we look at the Buddhist path, we become a little overwhelmed. And perhaps this is a good analogy. Last night, even though it looked so beautiful behind me, you wouldn't know. It was a horrible storm. And I was out at the time, and my wife texted me and explained that it sounded very dramatic. And I was like, oh, is it really this bad? She said, there are trees down, there are branches everywhere. I said, okay. And I came back, and then I started surveying the situation. And the more I looked around, the more disheartened I got. It's like, I'm a city slicker at heart, and here I am in the big open country with, I don't know what to do with a tree. I guess I have to get a chainsaw and things like that. So these are the thoughts that are going through my head. And, I started moving some of these big branches to the side so that we could actually clean up a little bit. And my wife came out and she said, I think we need to realize that this is going to be a long-term thing. We need to chunk it up, and we need to do it step by step. And before coming in and sitting down with you, I took my chainsaw, which is, it sounds very scary, but it was actually somewhat fun, and took it to one tree so that we could actually slice up the dead tree. And that's it. And I put it down. And I mention this because, that's sort of how we have to approach this. It's like we can't just clear the whole yard. We have to take it, branch by branch, tree by tree. That's just the way it's got to be. And at some point, who knows how long it'll take, the yard will look brand new again. It'll look clear. Same thing with our mind, because in the Genuine Being series, what we're doing is coming home to our natural wakefulness. Just resting for a moment and being okay, whole, complete as is. We need to clear away the debris. But the way we're going to do that through practice and study is going to look different. Someone else could look at this yard and say, okay, I'm going to start by taking away all the branches. I'm going to blow away all the leaves. Whatever. It's okay. The important thing is that we come back to the clean yard. That over time, we work our way back that way. Right? So, same thing here. What does it mean for me to come back to the natural state? Is it to deepen my practice time so that I have more time to just rest my mind in its natural wakefulness? Is it to do more study so that I can actually clarify how to come back to myself and how I can unhook myself from stress and anxiety better? Any number of these things. It's like, what is the best tools for the job? Only you will really know. I'm happy to advise. After this, you can write me an email and say, here's where I am. I'm in that beginner bucket, or I felt like I was sort of in that middling bucket, or I've been doing this for a while. I don't know what to do. Write to me and I'm happy to advise, really. But the point here is that we're the best people to know what the path should look like. We have some hunch, some guess of, oh, yeah, I sort of feel a little bit called out by Lodra. I should definitely raise my practice time. Or, yeah, I feel like I've been really out to sea and a structured Buddhist course actually sounds really good right now. Or, I'm still working on this idea of just being okay with myself and I want to stay there. All of it's good. You're the one who's going to know. But we got to, in order to, all of these paths that I've just talked about, everything I've talked about, the practice, the study, all of it, brings us back to the clean yard. That's the point. It brings us back to genuine being. It brings us back to being whole, complete, in touch with what we might even call our basic goodness. All of it, whether you clear the leaves, you bring the branches, you cut up the trees, whatever, at some point it's all going to get done. It's going to take longer than we want, just like my yard. But we get there. The way we get there and rest in that state for a long period of time is through the act of practice and study. So to conclude, I just want to offer where we might end up. Because for some of us, where we might want to end up is just living with less stress and anxiety. In which case, I think, staying as consistent with the practice as possible is the number one thing. And then adding in the teachings as you feel fit in terms of what you feel able to do. The more you do, the more tools you'll have to unhook yourself from stress and anxiety. Some of us may say, I've been working with my mind for a while and I feel this yearning to help others. And that's a time that we might say, okay, I want to switch more into compassion meditation alongside some of the mindfulness work that I'm doing more loving kindness in addition to shamatha. Some of us might then say, in addition, I want to, either do more structured Buddhist studies, or I want to read more books about the path of the Bodhisattva. And then some of us might be so ambitious that we would like to become enlightened and have that lawn be clear at all times. Not have it be clear until the next storm hits, but always have it clear. This may be an imperfect analogy, I apologize. But the idea here is that we are actually going to strive to be fully awake at all times, to not let ourselves fall into the obscurations that keep us lost in confusion. When they arise, to quickly tear them back. That's a wonderful and it's a wonderful aspiration to have. And sometimes people might feel like, oh, how arrogant of me that I think I'm the one who can get enlightened. But this is actually the same thing that happened to the Buddha 2,600 years ago, that at the moment that he was about to become enlightened, he was questioned. They said, this was known as Mara, the demon king, but we can also think of Mara as like the internal demons, the doubt that we hold. both might work here. Of who do you, Dharma arises and says, who do you think you are? That you of all people could get enlightened. He's so arrogant that you're the person. Well, and it said in that moment that the Buddha simply touched the earth. The earth shuddered under his grasp, under his slight touch. And it was this symbol of, the earth itself is my witness, that I'm inherently worthy to wake up, to become enlightened. We are all inherently worthy of becoming enlightened. Even if we feel like, that's not exactly my goal right now, Lodro. I'd rather just, be a little bit less stressed out. That's fine. That's very good. That's a very good goal to have. Maybe our goal is, I want to just sort of live a nice life and help others. That's also a very, very good goal. And if your goal is to become enlightened, that's also a very, very good goal. All of it is good. There's no bad here. But if you are in that last one, it's like we've got to really apply ourselves and really exert ourselves in our practice and study. And really devote ourselves a lot of time. That's good too. So wherever you are in this choose your own adventure is good. You're good. You're basically good. And I will support you no matter what. And if I can be of support in ways that are yet to be discovered, like you want to reach out and say, well, I would love a book recommendation about this, or whatever it might be. Do you think I'm the right fit for that sort of program or this sort of retreat that I'm thinking about? Please write me, and I will get right back to you. And we'll figure it out. Okay, good luck on this adventure. I will be alongside you every step of the way. And starting next session, we will, of course, come back into more teachings directly related to coming back to genuine being. Take care.